trying to test out. So before I begin, I just want to say that I've had this camera since 2017. Um, it was the camera I bought for this channel. It's the camera I use most of the time to record my videos, and it fell off the tripod just now, and it is broken. It does not work. Had a good run, but I was gonna get a new camera anyway at some point, with better quality and everything. I mean, this is $1,000 camera when I bought it. It was not a cheap. This is a Sony RX5, $1,000 camera, probably the most expensive point and shoot camera there is. But yeah, the screen is broken and it wasn't working for webcam use, so I'm having to use my GoPro right now temporarily until I can get a better camera. But anyway, I originally filmed this video for political betting last week, and I just didn't like the end result. It was probably like a 30-minute video, and I just wasn't comfortable with it. But I was doing my college football live stream this past Saturday, and a political commercial came on or something, and the topic turned into politics betting, and I probably started talking about that for a good 20 minutes. Definitely not on the college football topic, so I was like, you know what? I'll just pick up where I left off with a political betting related video. How does that sound? So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Just making sure everything's good. But anyway, so I don't like to talk politics on this channel, because it's been infecting everything in everyone's lives. So people are sick of it, But you can bet on politics. Every sportsbook online is going to offer political bets, and a lot of people ask me for advice on it, and I feel like I'm qualified to give my 2 cents. People are probably wondering, okay, you've shown you know what you're talking about on sports betting, but why should we trust you on politics? Well, it's literally what I do for a living, guys. I work in broadcast TV, but one of my main roles, it was my main role in my job in Iowa, is to manage the political campaigns, ad campaigns for the TV stations, right? I've done that everywhere I've been, is very heavily involved in political advertising research and media buys, ad campaigns, all that, a major function of my job everywhere I've been for the past 7 years. So I'm very privy to information the average person's not going to see. I work directly with the campaigns. I know what they're buying. I know what they're going after. I know what they're trying to do. I know what their strategy is. So I'm very involved in that. But that's not all I do, but it's a major part of my role. And also my job title is media analytics, consumer engagement, right? So my job is pretty much poll research, focus group, audience research, market research, all that stuff. So I've done a lot of survey design. I've done a lot of market research. I've worked with Nielsen on installing Nielsen panels and all of that. So I have a lot of experience in research and public opinion, guys. I've even done political polls, so I know what's involved in political polling. So I feel like I have some good insights that people might not know about. So with that being said, I don't want it to sound like I'm endorsing any particular candidate in this video. That's not what this is about. It might seem that way, but that's just because, like I said, I see things that the average person's not going to see. So with that out of the way, let me begin by saying this. There's two types of polls out there, right? When it comes to polls. And so when people are betting on politics, what are they going to do? Well, they're going to look at the polls. What are the polls saying? But looking at the polls is it's one piece of information. And what have I always said about sports betting is to don't rely on one piece of information. Polls are no different. It's the main source of information people are going to have, but it's not the only source. You have to broaden your horizons. Relying only on polls would be the equivalent of only relying, for example, on what's that guy, Brian Hollinger or whatever, who does the advanced NBA stats for ESPN. It would only be relying on those advanced NBA stats that he puts out for your NBA bets, and you're going to sink or swim based on that alone. And that's how I view polls. But with that being said, there's two types of polls out there. You have your internal polls and your media polls. So internal polls, oh no. Is my camera still on? Dang it. Yeah, like I said, I had to go to my GoPro and it turned off. Sorry. Let me turn that back on. Already off to a bad start. How do I keep it from turning off? Like I said, I've never used my GoPro before. Okay, I'll just have to keep that in mind. But anyway, there's two types of polls out there. There's internal polls and media polls. So internal polls are polls commissioned by campaigns that are actually intended to give an accurate measure of the race. They use these internal polls for their ad strategies, their overall strategy, and they keep them close to the best because it's valuable data that they don't want their opponent to get. Internal polls are the equivalent of a scouting report for a football team. You're not going to give away your scouting report, so you're not going to give away your internal polls. These are intended to be accurate, but the average Joe is not going to see them. The only people who's going to see these are the campaigns. And then you have your media polls, and that's what I have participated in the past. Media polls. So media polls are not intended to gauge public opinion. They're intended to shape narratives, and they're basically intended for press releases. I don't like the term media poll. I like the term press release poll because that's what they're intended for. They're intended to say, hey, look at this poll in a press release. And that's what I've worked on. So polls I've worked on in the past, these campaigns come to us and are like, hey, can you do a poll showing us in the lead or in a close race? Or they want a predetermined result before we even conduct the poll. That's what they're paying for. And polling is expensive, guys. It costs about $20,000 to do a poll. It's not cheap. I would say about $20 per respondent is the going rate for a poll. So if you want $1,000, or if you want 1,000 respondents for a poll, you're going to pay about $20,000. So why would anybody want to pay that much for a poll, right? No one's going to pay. Why would anyone want to do that? It's because they're trying to get a certain narrative out, and that's what media polls are about. They're intended to shape public opinion, not measure it. And a lot of these polls that you're seeing right now are media polls. I can tell you that. I know. I've participated in them before. I work for TV. I know what these polls are intended to do. They're expensive. So you can either pay a lot for a reputable polling firm, or you can pay colleges. That's why a lot of these colleges do these polls, like Quinnipiac, Monmouth, Siena, because they can at least outsource some of the labor to college students, and it's cheaper, guys. But college students are a lot lazier. They're not going to be as diligent. But really what these people are paying $20,000 for is not for the poll. They're paying $20,000 for the right to use a polling firm's name in their press releases. If a campaign just goes out there and says, we're up by 10, they're going to be like, according to who? But if they go out there, we're up by 10 according to whatever Joe Blow polling firm, they're going to be like, oh, okay, that's credible. They're paying for the right to use the name of the polling firm in their press releases. That's what they're actually paying for. They're paying the predetermined result. I mean, you can pay anybody for that, but what you're really paying for is the right to use a polling firm's name. So when I say all this, it's like, okay, so what? Well, like I said, I can see things on the inside in my day-to-day job that other people's can't, right? And so I feel like a lot of these media polls out there are misleading. The biggest discrepancy I see right now is the fact that state swing polls are not matching up with national polls. You have all these national polls showing Joe Biden up by 14, 15, 16, but the swing state polls and the state polls are not matching that. If Joe Biden really was up by 14 or even double digits nationally, it would be mathematically impossible for there to be polls out there showing Trump ahead in Florida and Texas and Georgia. Keep in mind that Barack Obama won 2008 by 8 points, and that was a landslide. I'm sorry, but Joe Biden's not going to win by more than Obama did if he won. That is not going to happen. So that's why you have to take all these polls showing Joe Biden up by 14, 15, 16 with a grain of salt. Like I said, don't look at the polls. Look at what the campaigns are doing. Look at where they're spending their time. Look at where they're spending their money. And in my case, I can see what they're trying to reach. If Joe Biden were really up by 14 nationally, their campaign would not be coming to me asking to, not me personally, but the people I work for, they would not be trying to reach black and Hispanic voters if they are really up by 14 nationally. They are having a lot of trouble reaching them right now. So that's another thing. Look at what they do. Not ignore the polls. Ignore the media polls, guys. That's all narrative engineering. That's all it is. But like I said, it is mathematically impossible for two things to be true at the same time. Like Fox 35 Orlando releases a Florida poll showing Trump up 3, and like I think Quinnipiac showed a Florida poll with Biden up 12. Both of those things cannot be true at the same time mathematically. That's how sampling works. So I think a lot of these polls out there are just a product of sample and not being able to get representative samples. That's why they were wrong in 2016, and that's why they were wrong in 2018. They just did a very bad job of getting representative samples. That's the issue with a lot of these college polls, is that these grad students and college students that are doing the polling get lazy. They're like, I'm just trying to hit my target quota. I don't care if it's a representative sample or not. I just want to get to 800, right? If they're trying to get 800 likely voters, they just care about hitting that number, and they don't really care about doing what it takes to get an accurate cross sample and everything. So that's really what it all comes down to. If you're not getting an accurate representative cross sample of the electorate, you're going to be off, and that's why they were off in 2016. And a lot of people say, well, they were right in 2018. No, they weren't. They were not right in 2018. The polls were just as bad. I think they were worse in 2018 than they were in 2016. A lot of people point to the generic national congressional ballot polls as proof that they are right, but I have this picture on that I want to show you guys to show you what I mean here. So let me close this, and I'm going to show you this right here. So in sports, right, say you have a model that's trying to project totals, right? So say your model projects the Texans Chiefs to be a 47, the actual total for the game is 74. You're off by 27. Say your model projected the Raiders Falcons to be 54 and the total is 9, like 6-3 final score. You're off by 45. And say you predicted the Broncos Jets to be 46, the total is 64, maybe a 33-31 final score, minus 18. Look at that. If you add the difference together, it was 0, and the average of your projections is 49. And oh, look, the actual average is 49. But look at how off all three of you were. That's pretty much how 2018 worked. They were off really badly in the state level polling, but they were not off in the conglomerate. And I think that's because they were so off on state level polling that you saw something like that happen. And so that's kind of the analogy I like to use for 2018. They were really off on the state level polls, and that's what elections are. There is absolutely... Whoops, I did not show you that picture. Here's the picture what I'm talking about. Right here, right? But that's what happened in 2018. The state level polls were very off. They were very off. And, like Florida was way off. Indiana Senate way off. Tennessee Senate and Governor way off. Missouri Senate way off. North Dakota Senate was way off. Ohio Governor was way off. They were way off in polling in 2018. And a lot of these pollsters are rated A+ by the Nate Silvers of the world. And here's my opinion of Nate Silver. He's not a pollster. He's not a data scientist. He might be a data scientist, but he doesn't actually do polls. He just takes media polls and analyzes them. So it's always going to be garbage in, garbage out. If the media polls he's getting are bad, his model is going to be bad. And that's what happened in 2016 and 2018. He was wrong in 2018, guys. There's more than just a national congressional ballot in 2018. But going back, I've done, like I said, I've done polls, I've done market research surveys before. Reaching 800 people is hard. That's the target we try to hit for the market research survey I do every year, 800 people. It is very hard to reach 800 people for a market research survey, even if you pay them. If you pay people, you're just going to get a lot of lower income people. You're not going to get a representative sample as a whole, because mostly lower income people are the ones who are going to want to be paid to do something like that. If you're not paying people and you're just doing live interview calls, you're only going to get women 50 plus. So we have to ask for the youngest adult in the household to counter that skew. And so if you have a lot of these political pollsters out there doing live interview calls and only getting women 50 plus, are they trying to compensate for that? You know, they say Donald Trump is doing very well in rural areas. You know, so what if you were to call a rural area in the Florida Panhandle, right, and you're getting nothing but librarians and school teachers? Yeah, you're technically calling rural areas that go heavy for Republican candidates, but are you getting the right cross-sample of education within those rural areas? Because librarians and school teachers are educated. They're not blue-collar workers, so it's not a representative sample of the area. So that's kind of where I'm at. So like I said, I see a lot in this. I did this in 2016. At this point in 2016, I didn't think Donald Trump had a chance based on what I was seeing. But the last 3 weeks, he really closed in. And I would probably say in the last 2 or 3 days, I started to change my mind on that based on how the campaigns are reacting and how I was starting to see some shifts in ad dollars and targeting. I would say as of right now, Donald Trump is in a better position than he was 4 years ago, as of right now. So that's what this map is right here. If you can see the map on the stream, this is where I currently see the race. I think that Donald Trump is in a lot better shape in some of these states than the media poll says he is. Like Florida, I don't know where they're getting these double-digit Biden leads. There are pollsters out there that poll these states that the likes of 538 will bury because they just don't like the pollster or what they don't like. For example, Trafalgar is one. 538 craps all over them, but Trafalgar is one of the best pollsters in 2016. 538's poll ratings are just basically a measure of who I like, right? Like a lot of their A plus pollsters were way off in 2016 and 2018, and yet they're A plus. Like it's all biased. But I think like states like Texas and Georgia aren't going to happen for Joe Biden, guys. I think you can get a lot of valuable bets in those two states for Trump right now. I personally have positions in both states, and I think they're very cheap price based on, guys, trust me on this one. The Biden campaign is not seriously contesting either Texas or Georgia, and yet the media acts like they're toss-up states, and the markets are kind of priced like that too. I think you can get very good value bets right now in Texas and Georgia for Trump. And as far as plus money bets are concerned, Florida, you can get Florida at plus money right now, and guys, Florida shifted more Republican in 2018. It was 2018 was kind of a wave election for Democrats, and yet Florida shifted the other way. And there's been a lot of polling there recently showing Trump up, so you can still get Florida at plus money for Trump. So that's another position I currently have right now. Same with Ohio. Trump won Ohio by 9 in 2016. I don't see a 9-point swing in the other direction. And I personally have two stations in Ohio, and that's kind of what I'm seeing. It's not going to be a state that the Biden camp is going to win. Iowa, same thing. You can get pretty good prices on that state. And Arizona's the big one. So Arizona looks very bad for the Trump camp right now, but registration records, guys, that's something people need to look at. Voter registration records. Voter registration has been a lot more predictive in the past than polls have been. And Republicans are outpacing Democrats in Arizona in registration. The Democrat senator won Arizona in 2018 in a wave election. She barely won, and that was they threw everything at that race, and she barely won. I think in a presidential year, it's going to look a lot better for the Trump camp, and that's what I'm seeing with our Phoenix station as well. I really think there's only 4 true toss-ups right now. Nevada. I want to talk about Nevada. I talk to people. I have a station there, and I talk to people on the ground there. I have a lot of contacts. The Democrats are very worried about Nevada right now because of the closures. So when I lived in Nevada in the 2012, and I was there during the 2012 election, and I worked on the Strip during the 2012 election on Election Day. Here is what the Democrat Get Out to the Vote campaign consists of in Nevada. It consists of busing these unionized casino employees to and from the polls en masse. That's all you saw in like the day of election and the days leading up to the election in 2012, just buses going up and down the Strip with all these unionized casino employees in these buses to go vote for the Democrat. That's not going to happen this year because a lot of these casinos are either still closed or running on skeleton crews. The only people going to Las Vegas right now are locals and people in the immediate area that can drive there. The main driver of tourism dollars in Las Vegas and Nevada in general is conventions. They're not having any of those right now. So there's a lot of casino workers either out of work, and a lot of these people who worked in casinos went home. Like they just left Las Vegas and Nevada altogether. They went back to California or Arizona or wherever they're from. So they don't have that advantage this time around. So the remaining people that are still there, they have to count on them to vote by mail. That's the reason I'm kind of hesitant to be very optimistic about Nevada for the Trump campaign, because of vote by mail. I think that's kind of an equalizer. But let me tell you this. In most of these states out there, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, the governors are actually very popular there right now in approval rating, because they actually view these governors as looking out for them, protecting them and everything with all these lockdowns and shutdowns and mandates and everything. A lot of people might think that's not the case, but trust me, guys, it is. These governors are seeing record approval ratings because of these lockdowns. They think, because the people have been led to believe that they're trying to keep them safe, that they're trying to fight this. That's not happening in Nevada. Their governor is very unpopular right now because so many people have their livelihoods tied to tourism, hospitality, gaming, and all that. That's still, at a fraction of what it once was. They just want to get back to work. They don't want to be locked down. They want to get back to work, and the governor's keeping them locked down, and a lot of people are mad. A lot of people are mad in Nevada, contrary to some of these other states around the country. So without the ability to get out the vote for these unionized casino employees on the strip and everything, and without UNLV, completely remote right now, that's also a big source of votes in Clark County. They're very worried about the get out the vote effort, and that's why the Biden campaign made a stop there on this past weekend. And then I want to move over to Minnesota. So Minnesota, I actually believe, based on what I see, that Minnesota is a better state for Donald Trump this time than two states he won in 2016, Wisconsin and Michigan. I actually think Michigan is gone for Donald Trump. If he wins, I will be very surprised. But the reason I like Michigan more than Wisconsin, or the reason I like Minnesota better than Wisconsin or Michigan, is because there's just more blue-collar workers in Minneapolis, and there's less people that what I call suspect to social desirability bias. So social desirability bias are the people who might agree with Trump's policies but don't agree with him as a personality, and will therefore vote against him because they're like, I agree with him on issues, but I don't, I can't vote for the guy. There's a lot of people like that in Wisconsin and Michigan, not as much as Minnesota outside the Twin Cities. The Iron Range part of Minnesota is probably going to flip red this year. Pretty much everywhere outside the Twin Cities is trending red, and it's going to be a fight there. And the Biden campaign is spending a lot of time and energy right now trying to get the early vote out in Minnesota. If they're not doing that in Wisconsin and Michigan, you know why? I think it's because I think the Biden camp thinks that they have Wisconsin and Michigan in the bag, but they're being very active on the airwaves and making political ad buys in Minnesota right now. The Biden camp, a lot more active than they are in Wisconsin and Michigan, and I have stations in Grand Rapids and Detroit. I have a station in Milwaukee and Green Bay. So I know what the political activity is in those states, advertising-wise, and they're hitting Minnesota hard right now, a lot harder than Wisconsin and Michigan. So if Biden really were up by 14 points nationally, why are they, trying to hit the states of Minnesota so hard? A state that hasn't gone red in decades, right? So that's a battleground right now. Minnesota can really go either way. And then you have Wisconsin. Now, I thought about coloring it in light blue, but like I said, it's still kind of a toss-up just because you don't know how the WOW counties, the WOW counties are considered the counties around Milwaukee. The suburban counties are actually looking better for Republicans than I thought they would. They're contesting it a lot more than Michigan. I think the Trump campaign might be giving up on Michigan. They might not be. We'll have to see what they do in the next few weeks, but not as much as Wisconsin. But they're really going after Minnesota a lot harder than Wisconsin. But Wisconsin's going to be harder this time around. Trump actually got less votes than Romney did in 2012 in Wisconsin. So the reason Trump won in Wisconsin is because the Democrats just didn't get out the vote. And same with Michigan to a greater extent. I think the reason Trump won in a lot of these Rust Belt states in 2016 was because he out-campaigned Hillary Clinton, but that was not why he won Michigan. He won Michigan because Hillary Clinton did not get out the vote there. If Democrats can get out the vote in Michigan, Donald Trump won't win Michigan. That's why I have it blue, even though he won it last time around. The Detroit suburbs like Oakland they're trending more and more Democrat, and I'm not sure if the votes are there in the rural areas to get Trump over the finish line this time. Although, according to TargetSmart, people have mixed opinions about TargetSmart, but it's kind of like a company that analyzes early voting trends, ballots returned and all that. Republicans are actually running even with Democrats there in early vote ballot requests and ballot returns. But I just don't know what to think about TargetSmart. It's a third-party company, so their guess could be as good as anybody else's. But just based on how I've analyzed the Grand Rapids and Michigan ad buys over the past couple months, it just feels like the Trump camp is giving up on Michigan. I wouldn't say giving up, but they're just not contesting it as hard as they are some other states. They probably think it's a reach, which brings me to the last swing state here, which is Pennsylvania. This is the battleground, guys. This is where the Biden camp especially is drawing the line. I think just based on what I see, the Biden camp knows that states like Texas and Georgia aren't going to happen, that Florida and North Carolina are unlikely and not the best place to put resources. Same with Arizona. So they're really shifting all their resources right now to Pennsylvania. I can see that with our stations there. And really how it's working is that the Biden camp is, they're like, well, we have to stop Donald Trump somewhere, right? It's going to be Pennsylvania. They're going to go all out contesting Pennsylvania. The Biden campaign is. That's kind of like the hill they're dying on, so to speak. And they know that if they can deny Donald Trump in Pennsylvania, it's going to be hard for him to, pick up some of these other states like Minnesota, Wisconsin, or Michigan. So that's why the Biden campaign is having their town hall in Philadelphia Thursday night instead of anywhere else, because Pennsylvania is the state that's going to likely decide this election. Um, there's been two polls that came out today for Pennsylvania. Both showed Biden up by about 2.5. So it's still anybody's game. That's better than where Trump was 4 years ago at this time in Pennsylvania. He's having a rally right there right now as I speak. It's going to be that's what it's all coming down to. I think whoever wins Pennsylvania, I think is going to win the election. Some people point to states like New Hampshire, but I just think that's too college educated. That's too white for Donald Trump to win this time around. If you're looking for like a long shot, bet that I think might be realistic, I'd look at New Mexico for Donald Trump. Hispanics are trending Republican this cycle. A lot of them feel kind of like left out with the Democrats focusing so heavily on Black Lives Matter. A lot of them feel left out, and there's a lot of Hispanics make up a majority in a state like New Mexico. It's a long shot, but I do think there's value there. That could be a surprise on election night if you're looking for like something to bet that's not realistic. If you're looking for like a long shot for Joe Biden to bet on, I would. That's the thing. I think as this map right here, I think this is. I think what this map basically says is, if I were to say if I were to say the map as of right now with all these gray states colored in, I would color all of them in blue, and Biden would be up 278 to 260. I think that is Biden's peak. I think he can do no better than that. He can go nowhere but down from here. So it's kind of like the only thing that can really shift that is a state where is like if something really, really big happens. Like think Billy Bush in 2016, but a lot bigger. So if you're looking for like a long shot state for Biden to win, that's a tough one. Gosh, I don't really know if there is one. Like I said, I don't think any of these red states like that are not light red are gonna flip. So that's kind of how I see it. But like I said, if I were to place bets right now, I already said this, but if I were to, like I said, I already have placed bets. I placed bet on Georgia and Texas only because I think those prices are going to look better and better for Trump going forward, so you need to get on them now. You could really say that about states like Florida and Iowa and Arizona as well, and Ohio. Like, you're not going to get a better price for these on Trump than you will now, but I still don't think the media polls are done yet. By that I mean I still think you're going to see a lot of these media polls coming out showing Biden with ridiculous leads in those states that just aren't believable, that aren't going to hold up. You could maybe hold out on states like Florida, Arizona, North Carolina, Ohio, and Iowa and get a better number. But I think Texas and Georgia, if you want to get in on those states, you need to get in now, because they're gonna keep trending more and more red from this point on, and get out of reach for Biden. Let's see. I'm reading the chat right now. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Like I said, it might seem like I'm biased towards Donald Trump, but that's because the point of this video is to say that the media polls I think are off based on what I see, what I do for a living. And I don't think that's endorsing Donald Trump right there. I think that's just looking at the actual data that the average person can't see and saying, okay, not even the Biden campaign believes that they're up by double digits in Florida and Pennsylvania. They don't even believe it. They don't believe that they're up 14 points nationally. Like I said, a lot of these media polls are just there to advance narratives, narrative engineering purposes. Let's see. Like I said, this map right here, I think if you color in all the gray states blue for Biden, he gets to what, like 272 or 278 or something like that. And like I said, I think that's as good as he's going to be able to do. If Biden wins, it's going to be probably like he's going to be between 270 and 280 electoral votes. I don't think he can get any higher. So like now is probably a good time to buy Trump in terms of bottoming out. But the thing with Trump is he's a very good closer. Like I said, it wasn't until like the last 2 or 3 days. I did this in 2016. It wasn't until like the last 2 or 3 days that I thought he actually had a chance, because you could start to see the shifts. He is a great closer. He's a businessman, and he was just doing like 4 or 5 rallies a day, like at midnight, just trying to squeeze it all in. He's going to go all out in these last 3 weeks. Things are going to tighten. I can guarantee you that. Because that's the thing with these media pollsters. Yes, they want to push the narratives they're paid to push, but at the same time, they also want to be accurate so they can keep getting business in future years. So those last polls they do, they're actually going to try. They're actually going to try just for that reason alone. And they always tighten. They tighten in 2016. So that's why the best time to buy, if you're looking to buy Trump, will probably be now. And if you're looking to buy Biden, the best time to buy him will probably be like on or around Election Day. And another thing I want to point out is that, you think of your typical election night coverage. I work for TV stations. I know what's going to happen. We've been talking about this. Your typical election night coverage, they have like a countdown clock on the TV and it's counting down to the next polls close. We're going to call these states when polls close. That's not going to happen this year. A lot of these states doing the mail-in voting, a lot of these states are not prepared for mail-in voting. They are not prepared. They're going to be counting votes days, if not weeks, after these polls close. So a lot of these states aren't going to be called on election night. But there are states that will be called. And this is where live betting comes into play, like prediction markets like Predict It, and live betting as well. You can make some bets now, but I think there's a lot of value to be had in live betting on election day, and that's why I want to talk about Florida. Florida has the framework and infrastructure in place to be able to count these mail-in ballots quickly. I think we will have a winner called on election night in Florida. And if my assumptions are correct, I have stations in Miami and Tampa and Fort Myers, so I have 3 different contacts there. If my hunches are correct, if my reading of the tea leaves are correct, I think Florida is going to be called for Donald Trump on election night because Florida has the infrastructure in place to get all these mail votes counted the night of. They're not going to be counting days, weeks after, unless there's a recount. And so if they call Florida for Donald Trump on election night, this thing is going to drag out for weeks. It's going to drag out for weeks because all these other swing states out there that don't have the infrastructure in place to efficiently and quickly count mail-in votes, meaning it's going to drag out for weeks. So say Florida gets called for Joe Biden on election night. It's over, guys. Trump's not going to win. But if it gets called for Trump on election night, which I think is going to happen, it's going to drag on. So you're going to have a lot of live betting opportunities. And I will say this: if Florida goes to Trump, Georgia and North Carolina are going to go to Trump as well, and so is probably Arizona. All 3 of those states are very demographically similar to Florida. So if Florida gets called for Trump, I would make live bets on Georgia, North Carolina, and Arizona immediately because those states are similar demographically, but they don't have the infrastructure in place to quickly and effectively count mail-in votes. So there's going to be live betting opportunities out there. But like I said, this thing's going to drag on to weeks, so the live betting opportunities are going to last a long time. States like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Nevada are going to be total cluster Fs. I don't want to say the F word, because YouTube will probably demonetize the video, but those states are going to be just chaos with their mail-in voting because they've never done it before. It's brand new for them. They're not used to it. They don't have this infrastructures in place. There's going to be court challenges and lawyers and all kinds of stuff that are just going to cause the live odds to go up and down, unless it's so blatantly apparent one candidate is going to win. But guys, this isn't my first rodeo. I just remember doing the live betting in 2016 and 2018, and you gotta be prepared, and that's what I'm trying to do with this video. I'm trying to prepare you for betting opportunities. I'm not here to give you my opinion on political issues. I'm trying to set the table for profitable betting opportunities to bet on politics. So if you're asking what I bet on in 2016, I bet on Hillary Clinton to win New Hampshire. And I bet on Donald Trump to win Wisconsin, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida, Ohio, and Iowa. And I won all those bets just because, like I said, I didn't bet on Trump to win the election, but I bet all those individual states thinking he was going to at least flip 1 or 2. I didn't think he was going to run the table on all those states I bet, but I was like, if he wins at least 2 or 3 of these, I'll profit. He won all 7, and I had a very good night. That's kind of the approach I took. I was like, I just need to break even here, and I basically hit a parlay. I wish I had parlayed all of them, but I didn't. But that's what I'm trying to do with this video. I'm trying to set up set the table so you can have insights beyond just the typical media polls that everybody else is going to be looking at, and maybe look at things a little bit differently to find edges that you're not going to find otherwise. Like Nate Silver and his model, you just need to throw it out the window. He doesn't have a model. It's not like he is like some mad scientist that's plugging in all these numbers and running all these Monte Carlo simulations 20,000 times, and blah. That's not what he does. He is a pundit. He is an opinion analyst. That's what he does. He is an opinion analyst masquerading as a pollster. He does not conduct polls. He does not conduct surveys. He never has. He just reads the media polls that comes in and gives his opinions on them and just tries to dress it up and make it look fancy. Do not rely on him for betting analysis. Not him, not Nate Cohn, not none of them. And always, but if you are going to look at a media poll, like I'm not here trying to say that media polls are all wrong. I'm not a poll denier. I'm just saying that be skeptical of them because I already told you what the nature is of these media polls. So if you're going to look at a media poll, always read the crosstabs, because the true story is always going to be in the crosstabs and not the top lines. The top lines are what they use for narrative engineering purposes, but the crosstabs can tell you a lot of good stories. One thing I like to look for in these crosstabs is if they ask the question, who'd you vote for in 2016? Here's the thing. A lot of people are going to lie on that question. It's not 100% accurate, but it can at least set off some red flags. So I saw a poll showing Joe Biden up by 12 in Pennsylvania, and on the who'd you vote for in 2016 vote, it was Trump 41, Clinton 36. And the top line result was Biden 53, Trump 41. So basically, Trump lost 0 support from 2016, yet Biden gained 17 points from Hillary Clinton from 2016. So it's mathematically impossible to gain 17 points without gaining any support from your challenger. And also, all 17 of those points were coming from people who did not vote in 2016. So the poll crosstabs said that 100% of the did not vote in 2016 vote was going to Biden. That's statistically impossible. I've read a lot of these media polls, and I've read a lot of polls from pollsters I actually trust that are out there. Like Big Data and Rich Barris is one of them. I suggest you watch his videos. But he's basically come to the conclusion after all the polling he's done over the past couple of weeks that there's no evidence that we're going to see massive turnouts and all these massive turnouts of non-2016 voters that heavily break for Biden. That's what a lot of these media polls showing Biden up by double digits are assuming, that there's going to be a massive turnout of people who didn't vote in 2016 that all vote for Joe Biden. A lot of people say, well, yeah, that makes sense. A lot of these people who turned 18 since 2016 are going to vote, and they're going to be heavily Democrat. Yes, but they're not as Democrat as their predecessor millennials were, and 18 to 20-year-olds usually only make up about 2% of the electorate every year. 2% of the electorate every year. So any major shift in the 18-20-year-old demographic is only going to be about half a point at most nationally, and usually not enough to tip anything. It's not a meaningful demographic. So a lot of these pollsters are making two major assumptions, and I don't think they're accurate. They're assuming that the turnout this year is going to be about 160 million voters. Obama's massive turnout win in 2008 was 137 million. So they're pretty much assuming that 25 to 30 more million voters than turned out for Obama in 2008 is going to turn out this year and vote for Joe Biden. I just don't see that happening. The enthusiasm is not there. Look at all these polls. To turn out 160 million, which has never happened before, you have to have two candidates that have very enthusiastic backings. Joe Biden's not the type of guy who's going to get a lot of enthusiasm. This is going to be a base election. It's going to be won by whichever party's base can turn out. There's just no evidence out there there's going to be some massive new electorate this year that just boost turnout to record levels, way higher than turnout for Obama. There's no evidence of that. There's no evidence of all these new voters voting for Joe Biden either. It's going to be a base election. So that's what a lot of these polls, assuming Biden's going to win by 14, 16 nationally, are assuming. Record turnouts of 160 million, and it's not going to happen. And that brings me to, a lot of people are like, well, yeah, but there's mail-in voting this year, so the turnout's going to be higher than that. That's a good point. Like I said, a lot of these, the mail-in voting's a double-edged sword. It'll probably get people that might not have normally voted to vote, but on the other side of the equation, we're seeing a lot of stories coming out about people not filling these ballots out properly. So especially in states like Pennsylvania where you have to like put it in an envelope within an envelope. A lot of these people aren't going to fill it out properly, so it might offset. I think mail-in voting is just it's kind of one of those things you can't really make any educated guesses on because we don't know how it's going to turn out. So you're just going to have to assume that it's going to be neutral and take it from there. So a lot of these polls are factoring in mail-in voting, and I think that's why they're assuming these record turnouts because of that. I would pump the brakes. You can't make those assumptions. There's no data to back it up off of. And so that's another thing that I want to bring up is college students. A lot of I was in college during 2008 when Obama ran, and he being at TCU, which a lot of people might not think is a liberal campus, man, it was Obama mania at TCU in 2008 for the primary and the general election. I know what college enthusiasm looks like, but the thing is, a lot of these kids are not at college right now. There's no organization because of COVID. So how can all these people, college students, get organized and everything? Democrats are very worried about that. They're very worried about the youth vote. Um, and so, like I said, the colleges and the casinos in Las Vegas being closed are big deals. Trust me on this one. And so, going back to survey design, because that's kind of what, like I said, I've done it. I've, done market research surveys, public opinion surveys, focus groups. It's very tough to poll. Getting enough response, the response rates on polls these days are very low. I would say when I'm doing a typical market research survey, I would say about maybe 1 out of every 40 people we call is willing to do the survey, and an even less number of that is willing to actually complete it. A lot of these people are like, can we move up, speed up, I have to go, I don't have time, after they've answered a few questions. So getting a complete number of responses takes a long time. So a lot of these polls, you look at like when the survey was conducted, it'll be like conducted October 5th and 6th. 2 days is not enough time to be in the field to get an accurate representative sample. I can tell you that having done it myself. You have to be in the field longer than that. So I think a lot of these pollsters out there are just rushing things along just so they can get the poll out. And they don't really care about getting an accurate representative sample. They're just weighted on the back end. It takes longer than 2 days to get a representative sample. Like I said earlier in the call, when you're doing a live phone interview, random digit dialing on cell phones, you're mostly going to get women 50 plus that are willing to do it every time. That is the skew. And so unless you want your poll sample to be made up entirely of women 50 plus, you have to ask for the youngest person in the household to do the survey. Otherwise, that's what you're going to get. And so it takes a while to find the right sample, the right people to talk to get a representative sample, more than 2 days, which leads me to Gallup and Pew. So a lot of people think of Gallup as the name they think of when they think of political polling, right? But Gallup has not polled a presidential race since 2012 when they got it wrong. They had Romney +1 on election day, and he lost. And what a lot of people don't know is that the Obama Department of Justice threatened Gallup because of that. They wanted to sue Gallup because they thought Gallup was purposely, had lower minority samples than, the Obama campaign was seeing in their internal polls, and they thought it was intentional, And so Gallup got out of presidential polling after that, and Gallup basically said the response rates these days are too low. The way Gallup had polled for decades just wasn't working anymore, and they were not willing to, adapt. They didn't think it was worth the effort to adapt. And so when you have an industry standard leader like Gallup exiting the polling industry, that should tell you how hard it is to get responses. Like, I have to do fire drills with TV station general managers. And when I say fire drills, I mean they come to me about the Nielsen sample. So Nielsen is the service we use to measure TV ratings. And I work Nielsen is probably the main data service I work with in my job. So a lot of these TV station GMs are always running to me saying, "Oh man, the sample is bad." They don't think it's representative enough, and that's true. And the thing with Nielsen households is they pay you to be on the Nielsen panel. They will pay you. So if Nielsen is having a hard time finding 800 TV households in a market to install Nielsen meters and be paid to do that, if they're having a hard time to find a representative sample of people they are willing to pay, think about how hard it is to find a representative sample of people who are just wanting to do it on their own free time, right? And so that's why Gallup is like, it's too hard. So getting a representative sample is the most important part of any public opinion survey, whether it be a poll or market research or anything like that. And I just think a lot of these media pollsters are missing the mark. They did it in 2016. They missed the mark in 2018, and they're doing it again this year, I think. And so that's why I think the betting value right now still lies in the Trump campaign. This isn't me endorsing Donald Trump. It's not me creating this video just to pump up Donald Trump, just saying where the value is right now based on all these factors. Look at voter registration trends, guys. Voter registration trends in all these states have told the story and how elections turn out a lot more than polling has in the past. Look at voter registration trends. You can get them on the Secretary of State websites in all these states. That's a good indicator. That's a good indicator. And I can tell you right now, Republicans are out registering Democrats in a lot of these key states. Pennsylvania, Arizona, North Carolina, Florida. Registered Democrats have held the lead in Florida and North Carolina for decades. And the gap between registered Democrats and Republicans is as low as it's ever been. Republicans are expanding their voter registration advantage in Arizona. They continue to close the gap in Pennsylvania. So a lot of people, they're registering as Republican, but there's a lot of crossover vote. Well, that's why you have to look at the crosstabs. Is there a crossover vote? Like I said, this is going to be a base election. Whichever base turns out the most will win, and crossover votes are very important in base elections. And you're going to, a lot of people are like, well, Arizona Republicans are going to be more friendly to Joe Biden because they're John McCain-style Republicans who, don't like Trump. That could be the case. That might, there are more registered Republicans in Arizona than Democrats, but maybe a lot of these Republicans are in the mold of John McCain and Jeff Flake. And then you have to look at states like Pennsylvania and North Carolina. North Carolina's had more registered Democrats than Republicans forever, yet Republicans generally do better state elections. And that's because a lot of them are what you call legacy Democrats. Their dad was a Democrat, their grandfather was a Democrat. They've always been Democrat, but they just vote Republican in state elections. Same with Pennsylvania. Same with all these Rust Belt states. A lot of legacy Democrats that just vote Republican, so that's more crossover vote is going to be there as well. And I think, honestly, to be honest with you, a lot of the voter registration shifts we're seeing in states like Pennsylvania are because a lot of these legacy Democrats are just, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to register a Republican now. But like I said, why would all these people go through the trouble of registering Republican if they're not going to vote Republican, right? Especially in a year like this. So that's kind of how I see it. Wow, I have a lot of comments. Man. Actually, Trump, you could have got Trump on election night in 2016 at plus 800. He was live at plus 800 in 2016. My bookie has Trump to have 270 to 299 at plus 800. I would take that in a... actually, I don't know. 279 to 299. Here's looking at the map, right? I think if I were to color in all these states, not based on how the election is now, but how I see it coming down to on election day, I think Biden will hold on to Nevada and Wisconsin, but I ultimately think Trump's going to come ahead in Minnesota and Pennsylvania. So add 30 on a Trump 290. Yes, I would take plus 800 odds at 270 to 299 in a heartbeat, Alejandro. I would do that now. Do I think Biden wins the popular vote? Yes, I do. And I think he's going to win it by more than he did in 2016. California, New York, basically a lot of these blue states are becoming bluer. And that's where a lot of these popular vote margins are built up in states like California. I'm in California, guys. Trump is not popular here. There's, we're going to, and especially with mail-in voting in a lot of these blue states with ballot harvesting being illegal now, the popular vote is probably, I could easily see Biden winning the popular vote by about 5 points nationally, 6 points nationally, and still losing the Electoral College. Yeah, and so there's also, I want to talk about betting exchanges versus just books, right? I did all my betting in 2016 on books, but I think betting exchanges are going to be better this year just because, like I said, the mail-in voting shenanigans and everything is just going to cause so many crazy swings, and you'll be able to get favorable stakes and positions based on the media narrative engineers. I work in TV, guys. That's all media is. That's all news is narrative engineering. Narrative engineering. So all these narratives are going to be created on election night, and it's going to, make it seem like, X candidate is doing a lot better than reality, and you're going to have a lot of profitable positions to buy up. Remember in 2016 when Frank Luntz went on Fox News and he said that we're going to have President Hillary Clinton, and Trump's odds went to plus 900, and like it went from like plus 450 I think to plus 900 in like 10 minutes, because when Frank Luntz went on Fox News and said that, it people were, I even remember I was at work in Seattle at the time in 2016, and Frank Luntz said that, and I was like, I'm not even going to stay up and watch election coverage, it's over. And I honestly, when I lived in Seattle, I would get up at 4:30 in the morning to go to the gym. So I was going to go to bed early. I got home from work, at about 6:30, got ready for bed. I remember I was laying in bed and my dad called me, and I was like, "What?" And he was like, "I think Trump's going to pull this out." And I stayed up till like 2 in the morning in Seattle watching the results, and I was like, I can't believe I just won all these bets I placed. I won like $1,800 on election betting in 2016. Is Trump popular in Orange County? Yes. So here's what happened in Orange County in 2018. Um, it's not as it's every congressional seat in Orange County flipped blue in 2018. But Democrats are not that popular there. What happened is that Republicans just got caught flat-footed on ballot harvesting. Ballot harvesting is illegal in California. I saw it firsthand in the primary here. I was hounded by people around my apartment complex asking if I voted, asking if I needed help filling out my ballot. That's just code words for, can you give us our ballot? That's what people did in Orange County. A lot of these Republicans were up in the Orange County congressional seats after election night was over, and all the Democrats pulled ahead in the weeks after as they counted the mail-in votes, because what the Democrats did in 2018 in Orange County is they went door to door in Orange County, nursing homes, retirement homes, just door to door, and asked if you have your ballot. And if people said, yeah, I do, they would give it over to the ballot harvester, and it would be filled out, and that's how they do it. It's legal in California. It might seem like it's shenanigans, but that's it's perfectly legal in California, and that's part of why Trump calls foul and mail-in balloting, because of that. But that's how they flipped Orange County. So that's where the opportunities were in 2018. Like, you could have bet on some of these congressional races in Orange County on the Democrat, assuming if they were going to be able to come up with enough mail-in ballot harvested votes to overtake it. I think like one of the Democrats that ended up winning in one of those Orange County districts, you could have got them for 2 cents on PredictIt after election night, and they ended up winning. Yeah. So, yeah, the popular vote, it's not even going to be a question unless something major happens between now and November 3rd. And 3 weeks is eternity in politics. 3 weeks is a long time. Like I said, at this point in the election in 2016, I didn't think Trump was going to win based on what I was seeing with my day job. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't until like probably the last 2 or 3 days, like literally as we got to November, that I was like, okay, maybe Trump can win this, just based on what I was seeing in the data I was getting in my job. But yeah, that's why I hesitated. That's why I didn't upload this video last Thursday after I recorded it, because I feel like I was going to upload it and people are just going to be like, oh, you're just, a Trump partisan and you're just here to pump up Trump. You're not actually giving any analysis. That's not it, but I felt like it could have been perceived that way. What I'm trying to say here is that there are more indicators out there than media polls, and media polls might make it seem like there's one direction that this race is going, but like I said, you have to look at all your data sources, so that's where the value is at. I'm not guaranteeing a Trump win. I'm not saying he's going to win. I'm just saying the value is on him right now. That's what sports betting ultimately is, and then political betting. It's value bets, and all the value right now is on the Trump camp, because a lot of the data that you don't see in the mainstream media news sources is favorable towards him. You're only going to hear from the Nate Silvers and Nate Cohns of the world in the media polls. You're not going to hear about the voter registration files or the voter files or the return ballot information and things like that. And also pollsters that aren't going to be touted by the mainstream media, like Big Data, Trafalgar, those pollsters that aren't, that the Nate Silvers of the world hate. That I don't see why. I've watched Rich Barrett do his polls on his live stream a few times. He knows what he's talking about. He's not biased. He conducts polls, I think, in a good manner based on my experiences in survey design. I think he gets it right. And yet Nate Silver does nothing but trash him. Even though Big Data got it right in 2016. He was one of the only ones. He was the only one who called the 2018 Florida governor race. So are you any concerns that Biden is outspending Trump in ad buying? Well, we have seen Trump pull ads from some of our stations, but we don't think it's because he's out of money. We don't think it's because he's not contesting those states anymore. Here's the thing with advertising, is that most advertising, non-politics, so like think your Lexus, I'm going to use a Lexus dealer as an example here. Most advertising is done in cycles. So like, for example, Lexus will only advertise on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. At least that's what they did when I lived in Kentucky. They would only buy ads for those days of the week, and that way they didn't want to run ads on the weekend. That's not when people who are going to buy a Lexus are watching TV. They only want it during the week, so people go out and buy a Lexus on the weekend. I think Trump is being more strategic with his ad buying, which is why it seems like he's spending less than Biden is. And they're going to like cycle their ads, and they don't want to, basically they don't want people to get sick of their ads. Because when I did my road trip, if you've watched my video when I was in Wisconsin, that's all I saw on the TV in Wisconsin in August. Every commercial break was nothing but political ads, and I was getting sick of it, and I was only there for one night. Think of how the person who lives there is getting. But at the same time, you can't completely go dark on the air. You know, you can't let your opponent have all the messaging. But I just think they're being more strategic based on the ad campaign strategies I've seen. It's not that they're not spending money on ads. They are. They're being more targeted, more digital ads. And also, Trump is really spending a lot of money on his ground game instead of ads. Because here's the deal with TV, guys. Like I said, I do this for a living. My job title is Senior Manager of Consumer Engagement with a major broadcast company. I'm the number 2 consumer engagement guy in my company. I oversee a team of analysts that does television and advertising, market research, and public opinion surveys among 64 TV stations. And let me tell you the truth about TV is that the people who watch TV are adults 50 plus. They make up 3/4 of TV viewing. Adults 50 plus. Adults 18 to 49 do not watch TV. They don't. So eventually you're going to reach saturation advertising on traditional broadcast TV media. And I think that actually might explain why Biden is doing better in seniors in the polls. A lot of people say that it's because of coronavirus. Yes, I think that's a plausible theory, but I think it's because seniors are the most likely demographic to watch TV all the time, and Biden is just crushing the airwaves right now. They're seeing all these ads, and I think that's part of why we're seeing a shift in seniors being a little bit more Democrat this year than they were in 2016. But that's being offset by the 45 to 64 demographic, which is shifting a lot more Republican. So that's the truth about TV, is that you're going to reach saturation at some point, and I think the Trump camp is trying to go through other advertising avenues. But that's the thing, the Biden campaign raised so much money via Black Lives Matter. All the Black Lives Matter money that was raised was funneled directly to the Biden campaign, and they just have more money than they can spend, so they can afford to blanket the airwaves. That's how it is. Trump runs his campaign like a business. He doesn't want to spend more money than he has to. He wants to be efficient. That's how they were in 2016. They were not a major source. They were not the biggest source of income for the properties I represented in 2016. I worked for a different company than I worked for in 2016. I was actually on the cable side of the industry in 2016, but the Clinton campaign outspent Trump, at least in the markets I represented, 10-1 on cable. And that's just how it is. They just trust traditional media more. Philadelphia, yes, it's very Democrat. He won Pennsylvania in 2016 despite Philadelphia. That's the problem that Clinton had in 2016. She just couldn't get out the black vote. She could not get out the black vote, and I think Biden faces the same problem. Poll after poll after poll, even the media polls are showing Trump winning 20% of the black vote, which is unheard of. Usually a Republican will win about 6 to 8%. But you can go to New York, you can Google election results by precinct 2016, and the New York Times has a pretty good site where you can go precinct level votes. For example, the precinct I lived at in Seattle in 2016, I think it was like 376 Clinton and 40 Trump. You know, it was a very blue district. And Philadelphia has a lot of districts where Trump got like 1 or 2 votes, precincts, like where Clinton would get like 400 and Trump would have 1 or 2. And even then, they still couldn't win the state because even though like Hillary Clinton winning a Philly precinct 400-3 seems like a big margin, there's a lot of black votes that didn't vote in 2016, and Biden has the same problem this year. A lot of the ad buys they're targeting with us are trying to get the black vote out. And like I said, if he was really up 14 nationally, why would they be so concerned about turning out the black vote? You know, you got to look at what they're doing and not what they're saying. But yeah, the reason Trump won Pennsylvania in 2016 is he turned out the rural, white, working class vote. He turned it out. And I think that's what a lot of these polls are still missing in Pennsylvania. Big Data just released a Pennsylvania poll today, and they said it took them a few days just to get enough people to interview in the what they call the T of the state of Pennsylvania. So you kind of have like Philadelphia in the lower east, and then Pittsburgh in the west, but the T is like everything in between, and they kind of call it Pennsyltucky. But it's very hard to reach voters there, and the Trump campaign was able to turn them out. He turned out the Amish. That's another thing that people don't look at. So it's all good. Like I said, this is a base election. It's all going to be who can turn out their base more. If Trump turns out the rural voters more than Biden can turn out the inner city minorities, that's how it's going to break down. Yeah, there's no point in betting the popular vote. Like I said, anything can happen in 3 weeks, but it would take like a major seismic shift, like bombshell, for Biden to lose a popular vote. So if you can get it at a reasonable price, no matter how juiced it is, just if you feel comfortable laying that juice, it's probably a safe bet. The shy Trump voter is very real. Like I said, Big Data. His name is Rich Barris, also known as People's Pundit. A lot of what I'm saying in this video is actually just kind of like what I've learned from him. Not really. Like, I knew all this stuff before I started watching him, but he is a pollster. He is the polling director for a company called Big Data, and he just did a Florida poll, and he just did a Pennsylvania poll, and these are crowdfunded, meaning like the viewers of his stream raise money to do these. So, and he is very transparent with these polls that he does. And his Pennsylvania poll that he is going through today, you can even, go to the YouTube page and get the crosstabs of this poll and everything and look at it yourself. I want to say it was like 40% of voters in Pennsylvania were uncomfortable giving their political opinions to a pollster. If that's true, if 4 in 10 people polled are uncomfortable giving their political opinions to a pollster, then how can you trust polling? How can you trust polling? But yeah, the shy Trump voters, that's how Trafalgar got it right in 2016, is because they don't ask, who do you plan on voting for? They ask, who do you think your neighbor is voting for? That's a question you need to look for in these media polls, because a lot more pollsters are asking that question now, and they're not giving Trafalgar credit for it, unfortunately. But who do you think your neighbor is voting for? That's kind of a way to weed out that shy Trump vote. Like I said, you can always see it in the internals, but it's very real. Being worried that I'm perceived as a Trump supporter, yes, there is a shy Trump vote. That was my biggest worry about doing the stream. That was my biggest worry about the video I recorded last week, is that I thought I was just making this video to pump up the Trump campaign, and that's not the case at all. It is, like I said, all about value. Isn't that a song lyric in the song 1 Week by the Bare Naked Ladies? I'm all about value. That's what this video is about, value. It's like stock prices. Right now, like Biden's stock right now would be like buying a stock at its peak. And at the same time, I don't think Trump has bottomed out yet. I think he can go lower, but I think Biden, I think this is as high. Like Biden's prices might get higher and higher. Like I said, I still think there can be some widening, but at some point it's going to tighten. And whether that be now or next week or a week till election day, it's going to tighten at some point. So, like I said, Trump is going to go up, Biden's going to go down, if you can predict that. 70 to win 632, nice. Like I said, yeah, that's a great bet to win with 272.99. I think if Trump wins, it's going to probably be, like I said, the map I have that I've had up on the stream. I think if he just wins Pennsylvania, that's 280. Say he wins Pennsylvania and Minnesota, that's 290. Where you're getting into trouble, though, is if he takes Wisconsin or Nevada. That's where you kind of get into trouble, or even gets Michigan. I think Michigan's out of reach, but you never know. I thought it was out of reach 4 years ago. Um, I think you made a very good bet, Alejandro. Well, I've already gone an hour. I'm surprised. I didn't think I'd go that long, but like I said, I don't want to seem like I'm a partisan. I'm just saying, guys, that's the whole point of this channel is value. I did this in 2016. I had this. I've basically done. So 2014 was the first time I did political advertising work in the industry. I did it in 2016 and I did it in 2018. And then I'm doing. This is my fourth election cycle, my second presidential election. I know what to look for. I see things that other people can't. You guys, without going into too much detail, I mean, you guys just gotta trust with what I'm saying. I'm not like I'd say if Biden wins, guys, I'm not gonna say that I was wrong because I'm not making any predictions. I'm not making any guarantees. I'm just saying, if X says Trump has a 30% chance of winning Pennsylvania, and I think it's 50%, you need to bet Trump to win Pennsylvania. That's the thing. I don't think there's any state right now where there's value on Biden. I don't. Unless you're betting an exchange, like you can take a position on Biden right now and then things might get a little bit more favorable towards him going forward and you have a profitable position that you can sell, but I wouldn't hold on to it. That's kind of, you got to view it like the stock market. Buy low, sell high. Biden's high right now, Trump is low. Exactly. That question, getting better at being that question has never been wrong. Every time the Americans, every time that number is above, I want to say 40%, the incumbent has always won. And Gallup's been asking that question for decades. So that's the thing. If Biden were to win this election, there would have to be a lot of first-time evers, is what I call it. Like, it would be the first time ever, like, that a candidate who is at, or better off than I was 4 years ago, is at a high enough number that lost. It would be the first time ever a candidate with the higher enthusiasm lost. It would be the first time voter registration records did not predict the winner. It would be the first time the Helmut Norpoth model lost when it was in disagreement with the polls. So like I said, there's a lot of first time ever things that would have to happen for Biden to win. But like I said, this is an unprecedented election. It's the first time we've ever had an election during a pandemic. It's the first time we're going to see a lot of these mail-in votes. So there's a lot of wild cards out there. But like I said earlier in the stream, you got to make decisions based on data, and there's just no data out there on how mail-in voting is going to go. I mean, we can look at states that have done it in the past, but all the states that have already done mail-in voting are not competitive states on a presidential level. Like California, Oregon, Washington, those are all blue states. Colorado would probably be the most contested one. And just kind of looking at it, we can't really make any inferences on how, is ballot harvesting going to be legal? Are judges, there's a lot of lawsuits and court cases right now about mail-in voting and how it's going to work with ballot harvesting and stuff in states. Like, I think the judge in Wisconsin, or the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, said that all ballots have to be postmarked by November 3rd in Wisconsin, right? Where the governor was trying to have it to where they could be sent in up to 10 days after the election and still be counted. And like signature requirements, I think there's a ruling in Alabama saying that yes, you have to have a signature on the ballot, and Democrats are trying to push for no signature. The naked envelope thing in Pennsylvania, that's a go. So there's so much litigation around mail-in voting right now that you just can't make any wild assumptions. But this isn't a normal election, but you just gotta be rooted in the data, right? And there's just no data supporting a lot of these assumptions. Is there an actual sports betting like community for elections? Well, like Predict It has a comment section, but it's garbage. It's all just political mudslinging. No actual discussion goes on there. I feel like the best place to talk these things is on Twitter. There's a lot of good Twitter accounts that are very in touch with like things that are beyond media polls, that look at other non-media poll sources to make forecasts and predictions. So Twitter's a good place for that. Um, Micah, I don't know what I have to say about that. Any kind of forecasting is going to be based on value. You need to calculate the odds that you think something is going to happen. So like I said earlier, if you think that Joe Biden has a 10% chance of winning Montana, but the odds say that he has a 5% chance, then you bet it, right? You bet on your perceived edge, and that's the case for anything sports or politics. So, and then I want to talk about beyond presidential election. It's more than just Trump versus Biden. We have Senate races, we have governor races, we have House races that you can bet on. One, I did not bet on any Senate races in 2016, but I did in 2018, and I bet on governor's races as well. Like I said, same concepts. What are the media polls missing? That's what you need to look for. What are some things that you can find that the media polls are not picking up on? Like, Ron DeSantis was dead in the water for Florida governor in 2018. All these A-plus rated pollsters on 538 were saying Andrew Gillum was going to win easily, up over 50% and outside the margin of error. And let me tell you this as I don't want to call myself a pollster. I call myself more of like a public opinion guy. I don't know. But if you have a poll that says a candidate is over 50% and outside the margin of error, you're basically saying there is no way for that candidate to lose. It is possible. Yet you had all these polls in Florida from A-rated pollsters on 538 saying Andrew Gillum was outside the margin of error over 50%, and he lost. He lost. So why would you continue to trust these? The same pollsters got the Indiana Senate race wrong, the Missouri Senate race wrong, the Tennessee Senate and governor wrong, Ohio governor wrong. Like, what were they missing? But I haven't made any Senate bets yet, but there's some I'm looking at. I'm looking at John James in Michigan. He came pretty close in 2018 in a wave election. He was right there until the very end. And I was in Michigan on my road trip, and the ads were interesting. The John James ads were attacking his opponent, Gary Peters, for just going to Washington for himself, just to enrich himself and be self-serving. And Gary Peters' attack ads on John James were the same ads you'll see for Democrat candidates all over the country, and that's healthcare. I was here in Texas in 2018, and that's all the Democrats ran on. That's all Beto O'Rourke ran on was healthcare, pre-existing conditions. So I think Michigan is one I'm looking at. I think there might be some value on John James there. I'm still surprised to see Tom Tillis in North Carolina at positive money with all the sex scandals going on with Cal Cunningham. And that's the thing with Cal Cunningham is he has run on a platform as decency and, honor and all. And how can you run on that platform when you're caught cheating on your wife and sending lewd text messages to married women who are married to military members? There's a lot of military members in North Carolina who probably are not happy with that. Yet you can still find Tom Tillis at plus money. I would look at that. What other Senate races have kind of like caught my... that most of the Senate races are pretty cut and dry, but there's some out there like I think Lindsey Graham is going to. A lot of people think he's in trouble, but I think he's the Ron. I don't know about Ron Johnson's a good. For those of you who don't know, Ron Johnson in 2016, he was the senator. He's the current senator in Wisconsin, and a lot of people thought he was dead in the water. He is running against a popular politician in Wisconsin named Russ Feingold. A lot of people thought Hillary was going to win Wisconsin big, and Ron Johnson was going to go down in flames, and he ended up winning pretty comfortably. I don't want to say that's going to be Lindsey Graham because South Carolina is not Wisconsin. It's a red state. It's not a purple state. I would say Lindsey Graham this cycle is probably the Ted Cruz of this cycle. He's going to be carried over the finish line, but it's going to be a fight. That's how I see this race turning out. So I think Lindsey Graham, you might be able to get him at a decent price as a favorite. I think he's ultimately going to come through in South Carolina. I don't, A lot of these polls I think are really overstating the support of his challenger, kind of like Beto O'Rourke in 2018. So I think Lindsey Graham might be a good bet as a favorite right now. What are some other races, Senate races around the country that we might want to keep an eye on? If you're looking for a long shot, like a long shot Senate race, I would look at Jason Smith in Minnesota. Although I don't know what to think about Jason Smith. But if Trump has a big night, I could see Trump maybe dragging someone like him over the finish line if Trump were to win Minnesota. But that's the thing with Minnesota. I want to say like the type of voter who would vote for Democrats most of the time but will vote for Trump in Minnesota, I'm not sure if they would vote for a Jason Smith. That's the thing. These Trump voters that normally would vote Democrat but are voting Trump, they don't like the what I call conservative ink Republicans. And by that I mean like the ultra principled, like Federalist Society types, Heritage Foundation, all that. They don't really like them that much. And I think Jason Smith might be a little bit too much of that mold. Or Jason Lewis. I keep saying Jason Lewis. It's Jason Lewis. It's not Jason Smith. Yeah, there's only one pollster who got Ron DeSantis correct in Florida in 2018, and all 538 does is trash that pollster. And that pollster has Trump up by 3 in Florida. He has Biden up by 2.5 in Pennsylvania. He's about to do a poll on Arizona. So, I'll keep you updated. How much money do I make off YouTube? That's a good question, actually. A lot of people think that once you get monetized on YouTube, that it's like you're going to make life-changing amount of money. To get monetized, you have to have 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours of watch time. The past month, I made $349 on ad revenue. Overall, since I was monetized in December 2019, I've made about $1,600 total. So I've made enough money to buy a new camera that I need. I'm using a GoPro right now. If you didn't watch the beginning of the stream, I'm using a GoPro because my camera that I've had just broke tonight. It fell off the tripod and it just doesn't work. The screen broke. But anyway, I'm making more and more money than I was at first. Obviously, I'm getting more subscribers, more views. It's not life-changing amount of money, but it is what it is. I don't mind it. It's a little bit extra pocket change compared to my paycheck from my job. What was I was going to say something about that. I've had sponsors approach me to do sponsorships, but it has to be the right product. I had one major sponsor approach me that I really kind of wanted to work with, but they tried to lowball me on rates, so I did not accept. I still need to stand up for myself. But yeah, but the thing is, like, my channel has a high CPM, meaning like cost per 1,000 views. I get paid about $12 per 1,000 views, and like gaming channels, for example, which is a popular YouTube niche, they only get paid like $1 or $2 per 1,000 views. So I make a lot more money than a gaming YouTuber of a channel my size would make. Who's the pollster, Alex? It's Big Data. You can find him on Twitter at People's Pundit. He's good. He's very transparent, and his live stream is every day at 10 a.m. He just goes through what he does, and he's very open and transparent, and that's why I trust him. But the reason the Nate Silvers of the world don't like him is because he doesn't support the reinforced notions that 538 has. Let's put it at that. Montana Senate race, so that's Steve Bullock is a popular governor there, and then you have, I think he's running against, is it Matt Rosendale or Steve Daines? I think it's Steve Daines. I think Matt Rosendale is running for governor, or Congress. But here's how I see Montana Senate working out. I think Montana is fine with having one Democrat senator. I don't think they're fine with having two. I think they want to have at least one Republican senator to represent them. Even though Steve Bullock is popular in a presidential year, it's asking him. If this was a off year, I think Steve Bullock would win. But with Daines in there, and that's the thing, my company has a ton. We pretty much own the entire broadcast media market in Montana. We acquired a company called Cordillera, which owned all the Montana TV stations, like 90 or 80% of the TV stations in Montana. They're all under our umbrella. And So we have every Montana market except for uh, Glendive. I think we have a station in, and so I can tell you, Bullock would win in an off year, but I don't think in a presidential year he can win. It's tough. It'll be close though. I'd have to see what the odds are right now for that Senate race. If you want to tell me what the odds are for Montana Senate here in the chat, so I don't have to look it up, that would be great. Um, yeah. So David, you make a good point there. Like I said about Nevada, is that most of these politicians that are very pro lockdown, mostly Democrat governors that are mostly that are pro lockdown, like your Gretchen Whitmers, your Tom Wolfs, Tony Evers, all them that are really Andrew Cuomo, they're all very popular in their states right now because surprisingly, this is surprising to me, but the citizens, at least in approval ratings, they are media polls, you got to keep that in mind. So maybe these media polls have a vested interest in creating a narrative that these lockdowns and mandates are popular. You have to take it with a grain of salt, but these politicians that are pro lockdown in these blue states, these Democrat governors, they're seeing record high approval ratings. So I'm guessing that if these polls are to be believed, that the people in these states believe these governors are looking out for them and doing a good job at protecting them. That's not the case in Nevada, because Nevada's economy is entirely built on tourism, gaming, hospitality, and conventions, which are like at fraction levels right now, and the people in Nevada want to get back to work. And so you've really seen two types of governors during this pandemic. You've had the Ron DeSantis and Brian Kemps of the world and the Kristi Noems, Republican governors that are like, you know what, assess the risk yourself and be personally responsible. We're not going to be heavy-handed with mandates. And then you have the mostly Democrat blue state governors that are a lot more draconian. And then you have like the Greg Abbotts of the world. So I visited Texas quite a lot over the past couple months. I was there during my road trip. I went to see my sister have her third kid. So I've been there. And Greg Abbott is actually closer to, I would say, the Gavin Newsom than he is Ron DeSantis and how he's reopening the state and his mandates. And I'm surprised. But I'm really surprised that the national media has not picked up on the fact that we really haven't seen Armageddon in states like Florida and Georgia. We were told that if kids went back to school or played football or whatever, that it would just be like Armageddon for these kids. I remember listening to talk radio in San Diego. People were calling into a talk radio show acting like if they had to send their kids back to school in person, that they would be picking out a burial plot and a casket for their kid in a couple weeks, right? And that's just hasn't been the case for these schools that have reopened around the country. High school football they've been playing high school football around the country since August, and we haven't heard of any Armageddon yet. So I think I'm surprised more and more governors are not adopting the stances of the Ron DeSantis and Brian Kemps of the world. I really am. But it is what it is. Yeah, I lived in Florida in 2011. It was fun, but I was only there briefly. I lived in Jacksonville. Pelly Kojuti, hey man, sorry if I missed, but do you think outright odds for Trump will go up, or will the odds even out between the two? Okay, that's a good question in case you weren't here earlier. I think as of right now, Pelly, if you were to look at it like the stock market, I think Biden is at his peak, or if he's not at his peak, he's close to it. And I think if Trump is not at his bottom, he's close to it. And Trump has nowhere to go but up from here, and Biden has nowhere to go but down. Like I said, they might not have reached those peaks and bottoms yet, but I honestly think it has. You got to remember, going back to polling, it is like polling 101, like thing you learn in the first day of audience research class in college that I took, by the way. I took classes about polling and audience research and all this. The first thing you learn is to not poll during a negative news cycle for one of the candidates. That's polling 101. So what did all these media pollsters go out and do when Trump caught COVID? They went out and polled. During a negative news cycle for a candidate, that candidate's supporters are less likely to be willing to participate in a poll. And vice versa. The opponents of that candidate in the negative news cycle are more willing to participate in a poll. And and it's less so for positive news. It's called response bias. It's more applicable for negative news cycles and not so much positive. Like if Trump were to come out with like I don't know, say he were to like find a cure for cancer tomorrow, right? It would not be as pronounced in a poll as a negative news cycle response bias would be. But all these media pollsters went out when Trump got COVID and did polls, and I think it was by design to catch the response bias wave. It was just like with Billy Bush. Like Hillary Clinton's biggest leads in 2016 were right after Billy Bush during a negative news cycle where Trump supporters were probably less willing to participate in polls. And I think that's what a lot of these polls showing Biden up 14, 16, they are the product of response bias. It's very real. Like when I lived in Kentucky and we were doing market research for the Kentucky Derby, one of the questions we would always ask is, do you watch the Kentucky Derby? Like, what is your level of interest? And if we were to ask that question in May, we would get way different responses than asking that question in September, right? So that ideally you ask it out of Kentucky Derby season, and so you're getting more accurate responses because when Kentucky Derby is on the front of everybody's mind, of course they're going to answer about their level of interest in Kentucky Derby a lot more than they would in September. So response bias is very real, and that's why I think Biden is as high as he is right now and Trump is as low as he is right now. There might have been some shifts, but they're all temporary. People answer polls erratically. The actual opinions they hold are soft. I've done a lot of focus groups before, and the thing with focus groups is that the one thing I've always learned doing focus groups is how all over the place people's opinions are. It's crazy. It's so inconsistent. They're all over the place. And the thing with focus groups is people are paid to do them. And a lot of people who are willing to do focus groups are just looking for the check, and they're just going to say what they have to say to get out of there, right? And political polling is the same way. People are very fickle and feeble, and they're not consistent with their answers. So during a negative news cycle, they're going to be more influenced by that with their polling responses. Yeah, Drew, my sister lives in Brooklyn, and she she likes it there, but yeah, she does not like getting double dipped on taxes. Having to pay a city tax and a state tax. She's not a fan of it. She's a nurse. Um, so yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about there. Um, I live in California myself, and I know, I pay five figures in taxes last year. Benjamin, am I a Trump supporter? I guess I actually I don't know if I want to answer that or not, just because that's a good question. I know the answer to that, but like I had to sign an affidavit for my work not to engage in any partisan political activity. Because I work for TV and they don't want us to appear biased. So I actually just that's why I can't answer the question, but I'm sure there's ways you can find out. Yeah, Newsom is not like I said. I like to go to the gym. I like to get my hair cut every 3 weeks. I like to go to church. I can't do any of those things in California, and my family in Texas can. They can do all those things. That's why I'm kind of mad at Newsom right now, having no issue with that Lakers celebration in Los Angeles the other night. Yet he'll crack down on churches and gyms. I was actually at my gym in San Diego because the owner was open in defiance of the gym closure orders, and he didn't want to shut down. And I was leaving the gym back in August. It was like early August, and all of a sudden, like the police came in and raided the place. And I was like, "Geez, guys, it's just a gym." But yeah, horseradish. Horseradish. There's a chance you can win, man. I'm not. That's the point of this live stream is not for me to say Trump's gonna win. That's not why this live stream is here. It's to say where the value is at, and if you feel like there's value on Biden, I do want to say I participate in a political betting community in 2016. I was a part of one, and I knew a guy. He lived in Louisiana. He basically maxed out his entire bankroll on Clinton, and not just to win, but in a bunch of individual states. I never heard from him again after the election. It was like an online community, so I'm not saying he went off and like killed himself or whatever, but he just couldn't. He was probably ruined because I know how much money this guy was betting on things. It was a lot of money. He probably lost. I would say probably lost about at least $50,000. He was that confident, and like I said, I never heard from him again. I don't know what happened to him. I didn't know his name personally. I knew his screen name. But yeah, good luck, horseradish. If you bet the house, you might win. If you do, congratulations. I just think it's not a value bet. But if I were to bet the house on something, I would probably bet on a sure thing. And I just, I wouldn't say Biden's in sure thing territory. Yeah, John Brown. I mean, I made $1,800 at the time, but you got to remember, I was living in Seattle and I wasn't making near as much money as I was in 2016 than I am now, and so $1,800 for me was a lot. Um, Drew, you work in TV, radio, advertising. If you don't mind me asking, like, a little bit more details there. Well, yeah, that's the thing, Drew, with taxes in California. It's like, what am I getting for it? I lived in Washington State and didn't pay any income taxes. I lived in Texas, Nevada, and Florida, no income tax. So it's like, I don't know what I'm getting for the 10% income tax I pay in California compared to like nothing in Washington. John Brown, that's the thing. A lot of these like major news networks, cable or broadcast, they have corporate owners that have a lot of financial stakes in certain electoral outcomes. So that's why they're biased. A lot of like that's the thing. Trump being president has lost a lot of powerful people money. Um, Even Republicans. It what not just Democrats, not just like companies that are not doing well. Paul Ryan. I want to give Paul Ryan's a great example. He made a ton of money off of NAFTA. Paul Ryan. Him and his cronies made a ton of money off, offshoring U.S. jobs to China, made a lot of money off China. So Trump getting elected, getting rid of NAFTA and putting in the USMCA ruined, I wouldn't say ruined Paul Ryan, but it made him and his friends a lot more poorer. And they're not happy about that. A lot of these multinational, that's the thing, a lot of people say Trump is a candidate for the rich. He's not. Wall Street has, their donations are heavily going to Joe Biden. It's because a lot of these Wall Street fat cats are losing money from a Trump presidency because they can't outsource jobs to China. They have a lot of financial stakes in China, and that's why Trump has kind of made China the cornerstone of his messaging. Because like I said, a lot of these politicians and corporate fat cats get rich off, their cozy relationship with China at the expense of the average American. And so that's why Joe Biden's a candidate at Wall Street. His policies are more favorable to Wall Street. Just like Obama. Like a lot of people thought Obama was like the anti-Wall Street candidate. No, Wall Street did very well under Obama. Wall Street wants cronyism. And both parties are to blame here. That's what Wall Street wants. And so they're going to support whoever can return to the status quo where Washington and the elites and the well-connected enrich themselves at taxpayer money at the expense of the American. That's what they want. So everyone who says if Biden wins, the stock market's going to crash, it's not. It's not. People said the same thing about Obama winning in 2012. If Obama wins and Romney doesn't, the stock market's going to crash. It didn't. Guys, Wall Street wants politicians who are going to play ball. They don't care if they're Republicans or Democrats. What is my opinion on mask mandates? If you've watched my travel videos, you'll know what I think. I'm not a fan of mandates. I don't have anything against masks. I don't have anything against masks. Like, if you want to wear one and if it makes you feel better and safer, great. That is your personal decision. It's your own responsibility. I'm just not a fan of mandates. I'm just not. Yeah, Alex, my next video on my road trip, I drive through Ohio and I wanted to go to Cedar Point and didn't because I just didn't want to do the whole mass social distancing and everything that Cedar Point was doing. I just don't see how anyone could do an amusement park in this environment. Yeah, John Brown, Ohio. I still think Ohio is one of the best bets. Trump's not going to lose Ohio. I have stations in Cincinnati and Cleveland. he's not going to lose Ohio unless something major happens between now and 3 weeks. And yet you can pretty much get Trump to win Ohio at even money. He might be a slight favorite in the betting markets now, but it's a great value bet. Trump winning Ohio, one of the best bets on the board right now. So you're like an account executive. Are you like a key account, Drew? Like, are you like a national key account executive? I'm guessing. Do you think living in the reason I moved to San Diego is because I worked for a TV station in Louisville, Kentucky. I loved it there. I didn't want to leave, but the corporate ownership at the time was Raycom Media. They got bought out by Gray Media, and Gray Media decided to restructure the department I worked in, the media analytics and consumer engagement and public opinion research department. They decided to restructure it. They were only going to keep 6 people on, and I felt like I was the best in the company at what I did. There's I want to say 24 of us, and they're only going to keep 6, so they're going to send 18 to the door. And surprisingly enough, I don't want to go into too much detail, but basically I had a conflict with some employees at the station that was blown way out of proportion, and Gray Media used that to let me go without severance. And so I needed to find a job, and I originally wasn't applying for jobs in California. I lost my job in September of 2018. So all the way till the end of 2020, I refused to apply for jobs in California. But then I was like, when the new year came, I said, if I don't have a job by the new year, I'm going to have to start applying for jobs everywhere, and including California. I applied for my job in San Diego on January 2nd. Got hired on January 27th, I think. So, the first California job I applied for, I got. And that's the thing. I'm a corporate employee. My company is based in Cincinnati, and they have me based in San Diego for whatever reason. I don't know why. I mean, they could put us anywhere in the country, and they put us me in San Diego. Why, I don't know, but I'm hoping with being remote for the past 6 months that maybe they can let me work where I want to live. We'll see. John Brown, you are correct on North Carolina. I don't, the voter registration patterns in North Carolina are at direct odds with what the polling says. The state's becoming more and more Republican. So unless there's just a massive independent and crossover vote, I don't see how Trump loses North Carolina this time. I've said if Trump wins Florida, he's going to win North Carolina. Georgia and North Carolina run a little bit more red than Florida does. So I think Trump's going to win Florida. You can see that on my map. I have it colored in red and not gray for a reason. If Trump wins Florida, he's going to win North Carolina. And so that's why, I think Trump's going to win Florida. So I think Trump should be the favorite in North Carolina, so that's a good bet. Yeah, the stock market's going to rise if Joe Biden wins, guys. That's how it is. You are correct, John Brown. If you think Biden's going to win the election, don't play. If you're going to bet the house on Biden, don't bet the house on him to win the election. Bet the house on him to win a state like John Brown says, like Ohio. You're going to get better returns. Because if Biden wins, he's going. Actually, I still think Trump can still lose while winning Ohio. So if I was going to do a state like that, I would do. That's a tough one. I would probably do Michigan or Wisconsin. If I was going to bet the house on Biden, I wouldn't be Biden to win the election. I would bet on like a Michigan or a Wisconsin, maybe Pennsylvania or New Hampshire. One of those states, that aren't as juiced as Biden to win the election right now. Yeah, Chad, I was in South Dakota on my road trip, and there was nothing. Like, even in the restaurants and bars, people didn't have on masks. Like, there's nothing going on there that would even let you know that there is a virus. I've always said, if masks are there to protect other people, that's why they have you wear masks, right? And not to protect yourself from the virus, but other people. I've already had the virus, so technically I can't get it. How can I spread it? So why should I wear a mask, right? That's just the thing. But I think even as governments are lifting mask orders, like I think Florida lifted theirs, or I don't even know if they ever had one, but companies are still enforcing them. Like when I went to visit my family in Texas, Denton County didn't have any mask mandates, yet Walmart was still enforcing it. And that's kind of the thing. I don't think mask mandates are going to go away anytime soon in blue states. Um, I think they're going to go well into 2021. I think companies like airlines are never going to get rid of them. So if you fly, get used to wearing them. They're not going away. Hang on. I think private companies like Walmart, Target, and all them, they're not going to. It's going to be like a giant game of chicken to see who's going to be the first to relax them. Nobody wants to be that company to do it. Yeah, I work for local TV stations too. It's just that my company has so many of them. Um, it's crazy, but like I said, I that's literally one of the key functions of my job is to do political advertising, research, ad campaign strategy, all that. Like I've sat in on conference calls with the chairman of Barack Obama's 2012 campaign advertising strategy. I've sat in on, you know, I, it's crazy. I'm very well versed in this. Yeah, Ohio, like I said, Trump won Ohio by 9 in 2016. That would take a major shift for him to lose it. And you can say that Trump support is not as great this time around. That's completely plausible, but it takes a lot to shift something 9 points. That's a lot. Even those states Obama won in 2008 compared to Bush in 2004, like even some of those states didn't shift 9 points. Um, it really takes like a candidate with high enthusiasm to do something like that, and Biden is not that guy, not that candidate. Just the Biden campaign will say his rallies are so sparsely attended because of COVID, and that may be the case, but it's even then there's just no enthusiasm there. And it's one thing to hate. A lot of people are saying the enthusiasm is the anti-Trump vote. That's where all the enthusiasm is because people hate Trump so much. I've always said that hate is a powerful emotion, but I don't know if it's a motivated one. Because yeah, you might hate Trump, but if you're seeing all these polls showing Biden up way ahead, and it's raining and on election day, and you just don't feel like standing in line to vote, um, yeah, for a state to shift 9 points, I just don't see a candidate with as low enthusiasm that Biden has shifting it, like in a state like Ohio or Iowa. I lived in Iowa. It's a weird state. Politically, it's a very weird state, but these things, it takes a special candidate to shift the electorate that much, and Biden's not that guy. Yeah, John Brown, I said this at the beginning, but I know people might be joining. So, based on where the ad money's going, the Biden campaign is just spending a ton of money on traditional TV these days. They're just blanketing the airwaves everywhere, and I think that's why we're seeing a shift towards Biden among seniors because seniors are the demographic that watches TV the most. So they're the ones that are going to be seeing all these Biden ads running nonstop. The Trump campaign is they're being more strategic with their ad buys. So when you hear these stories like, oh, Trump pulled out of Iowa and Ohio, I think he pulled out of those two states because he has them in the bag personally. I don't think he's going to pull out of them completely advertising, but he's shifting his money elsewhere to more competitive states. But they're just being more targeted, and they're investing more money in other non-traditional advertising avenues. That's how it is. Because the Trump campaign is a lot more like the Biden campaign just wants to reach adults 35 plus. That's it, right? And the only time they're ever targeted is if they're trying to reach a race. They're like, okay, we want to reach Hispanics, we want to reach blacks, and I'm like, why? If you're really up that much, 14 points, why are you trying to reach demographics that you should have no problem having? They just want to reach adults 35 plus. But the Trump campaign is a lot more granular in who they're trying to reach. Like we want to reach Catholic moms, which is hard to measure because a lot of these rating services like Nielsen don't measure religion. Nielsen measures, they really measure age, gender, income, education, race, household size. One of the weird questions that it's more for auto advertising, but one of the things Nielsen measures is how many cars you have in your household for auto advertising purposes. But yeah, the Trump campaign is a lot more targeted in their approach. And surprisingly, the Trump campaign is a lot heavier digital in digital advertising, which is surprising because that's kind of how Obama did it in 2008, 2012 was digital, but the Trump campaign destroyed the Clinton campaign in digital in 2016. And I think that's a lot why these big tech companies like Google and Facebook and everything have been trying to inject them, and Twitter have been trying to inject themselves more in the election this year because they know that Trump just destroyed everybody in digital in 2016, and it's the same this time around. Big tech is trying to balance the scales. It's not the Biden campaign; it's the big tech, and big tech is in the, they want Biden to win, so they're trying to do their job. But digital advertising continues to grow and grow and grow. But surprisingly, the digital metrics are harder to come by, right? It's a lot harder to measure digital. Yeah, you're right about that, Chad. Trump is not the Wall Street candidate, no matter how much you hear about him only caring about the rich. He's not. Biden's the Wall Street candidate. Look at where they're donating money. It's not hard to find. Biden's getting way more donations from Wall Street than Trump. The stimulus package, I think Trump needs it. He doesn't need it. I think he can win without it, but it will greatly help his chances. And that's the main reason why the Democrats are stonewalling, because they know it'll help Trump. They know it, and they don't want to give him a win this close to the election. And that's the thing. I think the one thing that the Trump campaign can improve on is messaging. I feel like they sometimes miss the forest for the trees. They need to hit on the right points. What's a good example? People don't care about. I guess one thing would be these peace deals in the Middle East that are going. Peace deals between Israel and UAE and stuff like that. People don't care. And if the Trump campaign is just talking about stuff like that, nobody cares. People care about issues that matter, and that's why I think there's mixed messages on Amy Coney Barrett, and this will tie into the stimulus question because the polls are showing, especially in swing states, that people want her to have a hearing. People want her to get confirmed. She's not a controversial figure. She's not toxic to Republicans or Trump. If she gets sworn in as justice, it's not going to hurt Trump. Where it's hurting Trump is that it's brought healthcare back into the forefront of the national discussion, of political discussion. And every poll shows Trump getting destroyed on the healthcare question. And that's how the Democrats won in 2018. Every single one of their ads are based around pre-existing conditions in healthcare. So if you've watched these Amy Coney Barrett hearings over the past 2 days, that's all the Democrats have talked about is healthcare, pre-existing conditions. You want to take away healthcare. And so it's brought that issue back into the forefront. And that's where it's dangerous for Trump because it's going to get a lot of these people who might not vote who will get out there and vote. If they feel like Trump winning is going to deny their kid an insulin shot or medicine or whatever, people are going to get out and vote. And so that's why I feel like the Trump campaign isn't doing the best on messaging right now. They need to get issues that will get people out to vote out into the forefront right now. They need something to counter healthcare, because that is not a winning issue for Republicans at all. They need to find a way to change the narrative. They're trying to do it in Pennsylvania with fracking. That's not a bad strategy, but some of these states where fracking isn't a big issue, they need to find something else. I think they really need to hype up the USMCA more in Minnesota. Stuff like that. So that's kind of where Amy Coney Barrett is helpful and hurtful at the same time, and that ties into the stimulus. Is that They need to focus more on issues that are actually going to motivate people to get out and vote, and not meaningless stuff that no one cares about. Like, the Democrats are guilty of this too. They talk about stuff nobody cares about all the time. Like, climate change is probably the best example. Every poll that I've ever participated in, environment and climate change is always at the bottom of issues that voters care about. And yet Democrats are always harping on it as if it's a big issue. It's not. And so if they can get Biden talking about climate change, it's a win for Trump because people don't care. It takes healthcare and coronavirus out of the equation. It's a messaging battle, and this election is going to be won or lost based on whatever the issue of the day is over the next 3 weeks. The Trump campaign, if they're going to win, they need to get healthcare and coronavirus off the screen, off the top of the list, and get the economy and race policing and crime and safety. Policing, crime, and safety is probably Trump's second best issue after the economy. Find a way to get those issues back into the forefront of people's minds. Yeah, Drew, digital advertising is still a young medium. It's still in its infancy, and so is the analytics for it. That's probably the most frustrating thing in my position the past 3 or 4 years, is just how primitive digital data and research and analytics are. Very primitive. High Democrat voter turnout in the primaries. Well, how much of that high turnout was due to Bernie Sanders? And you also have to realize that Trump had very high voter turnout in the primaries as well, even though he was running unopposed. Like, he set records for an incumbent, and it wasn't even close. The records he was smashing. And that's the main thing that Helmut Norpoth uses for his election model, is primary turnout. And Trump was just getting ridiculous primary turnout. And so I think that kind of goes both ways. You can't really look into that. Well, yeah, that's the thing, Chad, is that she checks off all the lists for the classic conservative Federal Society Heritage Foundation type. Amy Coney Barrett does, and I don't think she's a bad candidate. She's not toxic at all. She's a woman. It's kind of hard for Democrats to get up there and attack her for optics. But the one liability she has for Trump is she has voted against Obamacare on the circuit courts and all of that, the Affordable Care Act, and that's the line. That's how Democrats won these elections in 2018, was on healthcare. I mean, I remember when I was in Texas, moved back to Texas after I got let go from my job in Kentucky, and that's all I saw from Beto O'Rourke and Colin Allred and all these other Democrats in the area was healthcare ads. That's all they ran on. Like, the Republicans want to take away your healthcare. They want to, deny you coverage for pre-existing conditions. All that. That's all it was, and they're doing the same thing again this year. And I think if the Republicans are playing the long game, Barrett's was the right choice. But if they were looking for more of a short-term political victory, especially to get Trump over the finish line, then she probably wasn't the best choice. So Ron Paul. Ron Paul. I was a Ron Paul guy. I voted for him in 2008 and 2012. So that should probably give you some indication on how what shapes my political viewpoints. For whoever asked me earlier if I was a Trump supporter, I was a Ron Paul guy. That's the thing. The affidavit I had to sign says I can't endorse any current political candidate, and Ron Paul's not a current guy, so I can tell you I did vote for him twice. No, so I did not vote for McCain. I did not vote for Romney. I just couldn't do it. That's the thing, third-party spoilers. Gary Johnson got a lot of votes in 2016, and I don't think the Libertarian candidate this time around is going to siphon as many votes away. So you had states where the margin between Clinton and Trump was smaller than the number of votes Gary Johnson got. So the question is, who are Gary Johnson voters going to vote for? I don't know. I think if I had to just spitball, I would say probably 60. If they vote for one of the two and not Libertarian again, it would probably go 60-40 Biden, but that's just my spitballing it. I will say this. I was very I just can't. I mean, does my affidavit say? I think my affidavit says I can't say what I plan on doing, but can I say what I did in the past? You know, I don't know. Um, Cush Hector, you got to remember, Biden is a. I don't know how to say it. Biden is a Trojan horse. He's a figurehead. He was selected by the Democrats to be a stand-in candidate, a hologram, so to speak. His job is to get elected and then step down, so Kamala can take over. Kamala is who they wanted, but she could not win an election. She couldn't win a primary. So that's what's going to happen if Biden wins. He's not going to last very long. He'll step down. He's a Trojan horse. Because they know someone like Kamala can't win a national election. Um, and so I think the Trump campaign really needs to hammer that more. You're not. It's not Trump versus Biden. It's Trump versus Harris. And that's the thing with his events. 50 people aren't showing up, but you got to remember, Biden is not doing the campaigning. Biden is not the main campaign apparatus. Biden's campaign apparatus is the media. I work in the media. I know. They are doing the campaigning for him. So it doesn't matter if only 50 people show up to his events. That's not his main campaign apparatus. That's just to keep up appearances and give local media a reason to cover him. The real people doing his bidding are the national media. Um, that's just how it is, guys. Do I think Harris versus Pence has an effect on the outcome? I think I would say that the turning point in 2016 was Pence's debate. Although Billy Bush did happen after that, I believe Pence's strong debate performance and then Trump's town hall debate performance kind of like neutralized the Billy Bush tape. So I think Pence having a good debate last week kind of helped stop the Trump slide. Because he was sliding, it was not looking good. I think it kind of helped stop the slide, and I think Trump getting back on the campaign trail is going to bring his numbers up. You got to remember, Trump won in 2016 because he outworked Clinton. He was having 5-6 rallies a night towards the end there. When he needs to be on the campaign trail, he has to be, and anything to get him off the campaign trail is a negative. So that's why Pence having that good debate kind of like helped him because Trump was not out on the campaign trail. He needed something to change the narrative. And I don't care what CNN says. I don't care what their poll says. Kamala Harris did not win that debate. Pence won that debate pretty handily. Why do I stay in California? Because my company won't let me leave. I'm remote. I've been remote since March, and I will be remote until at least April. And I asked my company, I was like, "Can I move? If I can work from anywhere, why do I have to stay here in California?" And they gave me the runaround. Said a lot of people say I should just move anyway, and how are they going to know? But this is like a garage apartment that I'm living in, just so I'm not committing to anything long term. Deep down, secretly, I would like to get out of California as soon as I can. But I'm under a contract, so I can't just quit the job and go. But the contract is up in February, so I have 4 months? Why is the mainstream media biased? Well, I work in media. I can tell you that the national media is biased because they're owned by corporations that have vested interest in certain electoral outcomes. So they're going to employ people that operate as narrative engineers to make sure those electoral outcomes happen. So like NBC is owned by Comcast. Comcast wants certain electoral outcomes. All these mega corporations are very heavily invested in China. Disney owns ABC. Comcast owns NBC. Fox is owned by News Corp, and CBS is owned by Viacom. All four of those corporations are heavily invested in China. So they have a vested interest in certain electoral outcomes. They're going to make sure those narratives are advanced. Also, the media is all based in 2 cities, New York City and Washington. Those cities are bubbles, so you're going to see their reporting as reflective of those bubbles. But then I don't want to talk about local media because you have your national networks and then you have your local news. I have a lot more. All my experiences within local news, so I'm more well versed in that. But working in local news, you're getting all these journalism graduates fresh out of journalism school. I went to journalism school myself. You're getting fed a certain opinion in journalism school. I'll put it that way. Um, they're getting jobs as reporters, making $25,000-$30,000 a year. You're not making a lot of money, so obviously, if you want to stay in the profession and get to a point where you are making decent money, you're gonna have to move up the ladder somehow. So you move up the ladder in the industry. If you want to become like a national NBC correspondent or something, making good money in Washington and New York City, you got to move up the ladder, and you do that by creating a resume. And what are you going to put on your resume to make you stand out? You're going to put awards on there. The local Emmy Awards, the Murrow Awards, all those types of awards that they hand out to journalisms and news stations and stuff. That's what you put on your resume to move up the ladder. And how do you win these awards? You run stories and produce stories that make the people who give out these awards happy. And all the people who give out these awards have a certain bent, so they're looking for certain bends to these stories, and it becomes just a giant echo chamber. I will say this, though. Local news is not as bad as national news. The stations I worked at in Kentucky and Iowa were very fair. They're not biased at all. You had individuals who were biased, but the overall product was not. But it might not be the case like that at all TV stations. If you watch what happened this weekend with Channel 9 News in Denver, that's the type of stuff that just makes the industry look bad. But local news is not as biased as national news. But it's still prone to bias with the individuals. Oh man, it's getting hot in here. Yeah, Costanza. I trust me. I pitched the idea of me relocating to Nevada and even cutting my salary, because I would be able to make up for it in no income tax and lower housing costs. But they still said no. Anyway, yeah, my voice is starting to get sore. I've been doing this for 2 hours. I'm surprised. I expected to go maybe 20 minutes. But yeah, I'm gonna put this to a stop. Thanks all for watching. I'll keep the video up so people can watch. But like I said, this video is not me endorsing a candidate. It was me just talking about where the value lies. And if you look at it like a stock, Biden's probably at his peak or close to it, and Biden's probably at his low or close to it. Buy low, sell high. As I'll just close the video by saying what my current positions are. I currently have bets in Georgia and Texas, and I'm waiting to put bets in Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, and Iowa, and Arizona, all for Trump. And then I'm taking a wait-and-see approach for Minnesota, Nevada, and Pennsylvania. And I have a bet on Joe Biden in New Hampshire. And that's where I am in right now. All right, guys. Thanks all for watching. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah. Adele, I'll answer your question right before I go. Arizona, just the voter registration patterns are trending very Republican. So the only way for Arizona to vote for Joe Biden is if a lot of these Republicans in Arizona are McCain-style and Flake-style Republicans. All right? Anyway, guys, have a good night. Tune in tomorrow. I got my college football picks live stream. Yeah, I might do another one as we get closer to the election. Thanks, guys.